We've just gotten some big breaking news coming out of the White House. The Washington Post is now reporting that the president has made up his mind. National Security Advisor H.R. McMaster is gone. The Post headline, Trump decides to remove National Security Advisor and others may follow. Joining us now by phone is the Post's Josh Dawsey. So Josh, explain what you've learned.
Sure. So 5 sources tonight tell us, Anderson, that H.R. McMaster's days as National Security Advisor are numbered. The president told his chief of staff, John Kelly, earlier this week that he wanted McMaster gone and he wanted finalists to interview to become National Security Advisor. He has settled on several finalists, among them John Bolton, who is a kind of hawkish television commentator who the president actually really likes, Keith Kellogg, who is already at the NSC, the National Security Council, and there could be a wild card that James Mattis or others bring to the president. But right now, what we've learned is that the decision to remove H.R. McMaster has been made by the president. What it kind of hinges on is, unlike Rex Tillerson, who the president fired via Twitter and did it very unceremoniously, the president and others around him want a more stable landing for H.R. McMaster. They're looking for him a high-ranking job in the military or a way to remove him without causing embarrassment or humiliation.
I mean, this has been talked about certainly for a long time. Do you know what the issues between the president and H.R. McMaster were?
Well, they haven't really agreed on anything, frankly, and or at least on many issues. They clashed over the Iraq War and the strategy on the Iraq War. They clashed over the role of foreign aid in the world. The president's worldview has been far more America first, as he describes it, than H.R. McMaster. And the president often finds McMaster to be too professorial, too condescending, in his words. And it really was never a natural fit. They obviously was hired after the departure of Michael Flynn, his first national security advisor, who has now pleaded guilty as part of the Mueller probe. And H.R. McMaster, while respected in the military community, never really got along with Jim Mattis, the defense secretary, either. We've reported that, and others have as well. A lot of tension there. He didn't get along particularly well with Tillerson. He didn't have a lot of allies in the White House. And now the president is finally making a move that we think he's been considering for months.
But it's so interesting, Josh. I mean, McMaster, Mattis, Tillerson, and certainly Kelly, those were the people that so many people who even had concerns about President Trump pointed to as, they would call them the adults in the room who might be kind of a more experienced people around the president. Tillerson's now gone, according to the reporting. H.R. McMaster is on the block. Certainly, Kelly's, seems to be there's been a lot of talk of trouble for him as well.
Well, there have been two kind of phases of the presidency, Anderson. You had the Reince Priebus phase in the first 6 months as chief of staff. Then you had John Kelly, who came in and imposed what was seen in the White House as much needed order and discipline, more formal protocols. The president's only briefed by certain people. But the president has begun getting frustrated with that. He is someone who is a freewheeling, president. He wants to do things his own way. And in the past few weeks, part of that frustration's boiled over. He obviously was warned by legislative leaders, by top advisors in his cabinet, and Gary Cohn, by world officials, everyone about the tariffs. He kept moving with them. He fired a Secretary of State who was chased on him for months. And what we're being told is that the president's at a point now where he's saying, I'm going to do it my way. I'm going to have the people around me that I want around me. I tried this, John Kelly method for several months, 6-8 months now, I guess, and it's not exactly what I want either. And in the past few weeks, I think we've seen that. You've seen the departure of several key figures. You've seen the president announcing moves like on tariffs without telling people on his staff. And now you're seeing him make some personnel moves that he's been champing at the bit to make for several months and has not done so.
Josh Dawsey with the breaking news tonight. Josh from the Washington Post, thanks very much. I appreciate it. I want to bring in our reinforcements, Paul Begala, Michael Caputo, Dana Bash. Also on the phone is retired Army Lieutenant General Mark Hertling. General Hertling, first of all, H.R. McMaster. What do you make of this report, and where do you think he will end up?
Well, from what's been happening over the last several days, Anderson, obviously it's not a big surprise. But H.R. has been attempting to drive the national security policy process. It was a little over a month ago that they initiated and rolled out the national security strategy, which early on there were indicators that there were some disconnects in that strategy and what was the written document and what Secretary Mattis, Secretary Tillerson, and the rest of the national security team said were our priorities versus what President Trump was saying was his priorities. It's not a surprise. The president chose HR after a very short meeting. General McMaster, who I know is a very smart, intellectual, and savvy combat veteran, but he also has some different personality issues that I think would probably rub against a president. HR is not the kind of guy who's going to be a sycophant. He's going to tell it like it is. He's going to say, here's the main issues with our national security, and we have to do the kinds of things that are associated with our security. And we all know that President Trump is a bit more freewheeling. And I think HR probably actually stood up to him on several occasions. He can also be very pressing in his characteristics, and he can stand up and support an argument. And as we've seen, that's not the kind of guy that feels well in this kind of environment and does well in this kind of environment.
Yeah. Dana Bash, I understand you have some other reporting as well.
Well, CNN is confirming that the president, according to sources that I've talked to, that Gloria Borger and Pamela Brown have talked to, has made the decision to remove H.R. McMaster. What the holdup is, according to these sources, is two things. One, who is going to be replaced with, that's obvious. But two, where H.R. McMaster is going to go next, because he is active duty. He's a 3-star. The question has been whether he would be put somewhere, deployed somewhere in an effort to get a 4th star, or whether he would go somewhere else, or whether he would retire from the military completely. I'm not sure that the answer to that is known yet, which is in part why we have been reporting for some time that H.R. McMaster's days are numbered, and that the president has been talking to replacements, people like John Bolton, for example, who was the UN ambassador during the Bush years, to replace him, but it hasn't happened yet. So this is something that, a way I should say, Anderson, that is being handled, it appears, quite differently from the way we saw the Tillerson situation. Whereas, yes, as General Hertling knows far better than I, because he knows H.R. McMaster well, there certainly have been personality clashes. Just even the basic things like the way H.R. McMaster briefs, I am told, grates on the president because of his style, because of his speaking style. Still, it's not like he's kicking him to the curb. It seems as though they are trying to find a soft landing, a way that is that is not as untoward as what happened with Rex Tillerson, or even James Comey, for that matter.